Welcome back to Home Theater Gurus. This is episode 20. So it's that time of year where Black Friday is coming up, and I'm sure most of you are looking for good deals on speakers, receivers, and things like that. So today we're going to cover a really popular question: bookshelf or towers? We're going to look at the pros and cons of both, and we've hit this in the past on some of the earlier episodes, but we're going to hit it a little bit more, and this episode is going to be kind of specific just to this. Now you may remember in the past I stated that 1000 hertz is what we use in the comm world when we're doing like radio checks. We want to mimic the human voice, and the reason that's chosen is because that's kind of the meat of the vocals. If you had to take all the vocals and say this is the frequency we're going to use, because we can only pick one frequency to mimic the human voice, it's 1K. So we can use that and kind of determine what drivers are handling the majority of the vocals. So if a speaker, or say a two-way speaker, was crossed at 1K between the woofer and the tweeter, we could say, okay, the tweeter and the woofer are kind of evenly handling vocals. You got just as much information as you go to the tweeter as you do going to the woofer. And now if it's crossed much higher than that, say at 1500 hertz, then we can say, well, that woofer is handling everything from 1500 down, so it's actually handling the majority of the vocals. So we can use that information to kind of see what drivers need priority, because we know that we want to make sure our vocals are really clear and properly located in the room. And what I mean by that is we want to make sure that our vocals aren't, under our feet when we recline, or aren't being, blasted into the side of the couch. So that's going to determine really what's best for your room. All right, so let's start off looking at a Klipsch two-way tower, the RP280F. Now this speaker has a crossover frequency of 1750 hertz. So what this basically means is the woofers are handling pretty much, the majority of the vocals. So, if you look at it from the side here, we've got a compression driver and we've got two woofers. So most of our vocals are coming out right here, out of this. So if we're sitting over here in our seat, just draw a little person over here. He's sitting in his chair, but he reclines his feet, and you're laid back. That's not a very nice chair, but anyway, if your reclined feet block those woofers and you can't see them, that's not good, because your vocals are coming out of there. These woofers aren't really being used for just low stuff. They're being used for the upper stuff too, which is quite directional. So, if that's the case, it's probably not a speaker you want to choose for this. And not only that, more importantly, when people use towers for surrounds and rears, you're blasting the vocals right into the side of the sofa or right into the back of the sofa. What's going to be at ear level is just going to be that compression driver, and that's handling 750 hertz on up. So it's really just highs, nothing but maybe the upper end of female vocals. So that's going to be a very, very poor choice if you're looking at using these towers for surrounds and rears. And again, for the fronts, you just want to make sure the woofers are visible when you recline your feet. And not only that, when you're using them for surrounds and rears, you need distance. If you're 2 feet from the speaker, and you come up high where the tweeter is, you're going to be shooting that tweeter into your ear, but as you come down lower, you're going to hear less tweeter because you're becoming off axis and more woofer. If you're 3 or 4 feet from that speaker, it's not going to image or have enough room to form a cohesive acoustic image. So you need some room from those speakers, when they're stretched out so wide, when you've got 2 or 3 feet between the vocals and 2 drivers here and a tweeter up here. That's a lot of distance. You can't be on top of that speaker and have a good image. You need to be away from it a little bit. It needs a little room to form that nice, to where it sounds like it's coming from one spot in the room. All right, so now let's look at the Klipsch RF7. Now, you see this one is crossed at 1300 hertz. So that's actually much better. But it's still, the majority of the vocals are going to be coming from the woofers. Now this is a taller tower, so the woofers are up higher. So there's a good chance that if you're reclining, your feet are not going to be blocking these woofers. And it's going to be a nice speaker to have as towers. Even though Bookshelves may be a little superior in the fact that you can get the sound exactly where you want it much easier, and you're not, you don't have to worry about reclined feet and things like that. Towers look good in a living room. I'm not going to lie. I've built my own towers. This is what I have here, some modules, subs on top and bottom with a Fusion 8 center. But I like the look of towers. So this would be something that I would go with, like the RF7. I would be happy with something like that, and I would get good sound out of it. But I would not, under any circumstances, use it for surrounds and rears. Alright, so let's look at some three-way speakers. Now, three-way speakers are a little bit different because the mid-range is going to handle the vocals, or pretty much, you know, the meat of the vocals. Okay, let's look at the SVS Prime Tower. Now, we see here it has a crossover from the mid-range to the tweeter at 2.1K. So 2100 hertz. You know, so that's going to be pretty much above the vocals. I mean, sure, there's going to be the very, very top of the vocals there, you know, going to that tweeter, but the mid-range and the tweeter can both easily be placed at ear level. And it crosses to the woofers underneath it at 350 hertz. So the tweeter and mid-range take up a very small area, you know, top to bottom. And that's going to be everything from 350 hertz and up is in that one spot. So that's all of your directional frequencies are going to be handled between those two speakers, and the woofers are handling 350 and down. It's not nearly as directional, so I mean, you could even recline your feet and block these speakers and it wouldn't really be affected. You could even put these for surrounds and rears, and really, again, it wouldn't be a big deal. I mean, a little bit, you know, because then the woofers are going to be still shooting into the side of the couch, but those frequencies are low enough to where they're becoming modal. So this could pretty much be used anywhere. And let's look at the Paradigm Studio 100. I think this is version 5. Same thing, very similar to the Prime Tower. You know, they're making sure that this mid-range is handling up most of the vocals. It crosses from mid-range to tweeter at 2000 hertz, 2K, and it goes from the mid-range to the woofer at 300 hertz. So again, it's keeping the meat, you know, all of those directional frequencies are going to be in a very small area. They're not spread out along that, you know, huge baffle. They're just, you know, it can easily be placed at ear level. Reclined feet aren't going to block it if you had it, or if you wanted to, just use them for surrounds and rears. You could get away with it on something like that. Again, that doesn't mean they're going to be optimally placed, because we know, you know, for Atmos, we want to be at head level, but it would be best to be slightly above. Dolby states that we can be 1.25 times the height of the mains for our surrounds and rears. So, I mean, it is nice to be a little above it, just so, you know, your head's not blocking the person next to you. Now, that's pretty much just the acoustic benefits of having, you know, a three-way tower versus a two-way, or using a bookshelf. You know, the bookshelf, again, is kind of like the mid-range when we use a three-way. You know, a two-way bookshelf is still going to have all the sound in a nice compact area. So you can be closer to the speaker, and it's going to form an acoustic image much faster. And, you know, you don't have to worry. You can place them where you need to place them. You can get them at the proper height much easier. You don't have to worry about reclined feet blocking them. So acoustically speaking, it's hard to beat a bookshelf. Some people like towers because, you know, they dig deeper. But as we know from some of the earlier episodes with subs, if we can get our subs aligned perfectly and we can get that good seat-to-seat response, we're going to want our subs handling everything they can as soon as it's not localized. If that's 80 hertz, 90 hertz, whatever it is, we want the subs handling it. So that's going to kind of, you know, maybe we don't want towers, or we don't need towers, because we know we're going to be crossing to our subs as soon as we can. But that doesn't mean that some people don't like the looks of towers. Like I said, I love the looks of towers in a living room. And some people, maybe they don't have their subs, you know, set up correctly. Anytime someone says, my mains produce bass better than my subs, then you've got problems with your subs. If you feel that way, you need to go check out episode 7. And episode 10 is a little bit simpler than episode 7. Episode 7 is a little bit complex. And also check out episode 18 so you can see, you know, where all that mid bass everyone talks about and that kick, see where it's at. That episode, you know, actually shows you where it's at. So anyway, personally, I don't feel that you should be crossing, you know, much lower than 80 hertz, you know. So your mains really shouldn't be handling the bass, because your subs, if properly set up, are going to do a much better job. And you're going to get a consistent, similar to response at every seat, which you can only get from having multiple sources of bass. Using your mains to play down low means, you know, your right speaker or your right main could play a bass note by itself, which means everyone's going to hear a different response. So when we use subs, we're kind of after more quality bass, or quality bass from more people. So again, if you feel like your mains do a better job, you need to check your subs out. Something's not right. Now, sometimes with mains, you know, like a speaker line, you may get a few more dB sensitivity out of a tower versus a bookshelf. Now, this is because there's more drivers. You know, when you add drivers, you're adding more output using the same wattage. The sensitivity can go up. But now sometimes you're limited by the tweeter. If the tweeter can only go so loud and it's the limiting factor in that design, then it doesn't matter how many woofers you add, you still can't go any louder than that tweeter can handle. If you have a company that has a tweeter and a specific woofer and a bookshelf, and then they have a tower that has the exact same, tweeter and woofer, and they just add another couple woofers, it doesn't mean it's going to have a higher sensitivity. You need to look at it. If you ever notice when you look at a professionally designed high-end home theater, like at the level that, wins CD awards where everything's hidden, they're usually using in-wall speakers or, bookshelf size in-wall speakers. And that's for a reason. It's because they're easily placed. And as long as you can meet your output requirements, there's no real reason to have, towers, because in home theater, we use the subs to handle everything below our crossover frequency that we set. So just keep that in mind, and all this other stuff about the crossover points, what's handling what, when you do your speaker selection. And again, for a living room, my personal preference are towers, because it's aesthetics too. It's not just all about, acoustics. We need to understand the acoustics so we know what's going to fit our needs best and what's not going to work, but it's also about aesthetics. Everyone wants a really cool looking, living room. When you walk in, there's nothing like seeing big, huge towers, and it's fun. It's part of the hobby. So don't think in any way that I'm negative against towers. I love towers. Now, if you want to take it a step beyond what we've gone over here about what drivers handle what, and where the vocals are being produced, if you want to actually look at what makes a speaker a good speaker as far as, acoustically on and off axis, things like that, that really make a speaker stand out from another speaker, go to episode 4. Here's a pop-up of it right here. So go to that episode, watch it, and it's going to really explain to you not only what to look for, but how to demo. When you're listening to a speaker, there's things that the store can do, where you're demoing it in their demo room to hide a tremendous amount of flaws in a speaker. And then when you get home, you set it up and it doesn't sound anything like it did when it was in the demo room. So, that episode's going to explain that to you. It just makes you a smarter buyer, so you're not easily tricked, and you just kind of helps you pay attention to the things besides just what we hear with our ear, because a lot of stuff can be hidden. And believe me, they're not going to stick high-end speakers in a room full of reflections. That's going to show off some imperfections they may have. And that right there is going to lead us into the next episodes, because after this episode, a lot of you have been waiting for this. We're going to start with room acoustics and how to treat our speakers and when we should use one type of treatment versus another, and what does this type of treatment do in comparison to this type. So we're going to learn how to basically manipulate the reflections in the room to give us the best sound possible, because there is just as much sound coming from the room as we get from our speakers. And if that's not handled properly, the end result and what hits our ears is not going to sound nearly as good as it should. Alright guys, don't forget to look down in the description for this episode's cool gadget. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know the next episodes come out, including the ones coming up on room acoustics. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit the notification bell so you know when the new episodes are going to come out and you don't miss things like the room acoustics. And every week I'm putting out new videos, so just that'll make sure that you're getting alerted when they come out. And that's going to be it for this one, guys. I'll see you next time.